Imagine waking up 10 years from now, secure in the knowledge that your savings, the wealth you built through decades of hard work, didn't just survive the global collapse, but multiplied. If you watched our previous video about the 7-stage reserve currency death cycle, you know the dollar is in stage 5 right now. History doesn't just tell us where we are. It tells us exactly what stage 6 and stage 7 look like month by month, year by year, event by event. We have for historical roadmaps Portugal, the Netherlands, Britain, and now America. The average timeline from stage 5 to complete collapse, 18 years. The dollar entered stage 5 in 2008. That was 17 years ago. We are now entering the historical window for the final stages. What if you could turn the world's greatest financial crisis into your greatest generational wealth opportunity? Let me show you exactly what happens in the final 2 stages. Not theory, not speculation, but historical fact, using Britain's collapse as our best roadmap. Then, I'll overlay that template onto the dollar, starting in 2025. Stage 6 is the warning period, the moment when smart money positions itself. Stage 7 is the collapse itself, the currency crisis, the replacement, when decades of accumulated wealth evaporates in months. Stage 6 is called the loss of confidence and search for alternatives. For Britain, this began in 1945. They won the war but lost their economy, burdened by debt. The pound was artificial, held up only by massive American loans. Do you believe your government can print its way out of $35 trillion in debt without a consequence? In 1949, Britain tried to make the pound convertible, and everyone ran for the exits. The real break came that September. The government announced a 30% devaluation overnight. If you held pounds, 30% of your wealth vanished instantly. This wasn't a one-time event. It was the start of a pattern. Throughout the 1950s, central banks started quietly shifting to the dollar. By 1955, the dollar had surpassed the pound. The Suez Crisis in 1956 was the moment of complete humiliation. The US threatened to dump British bonds, forcing Britain to withdraw. This proved to the world Britain was no longer a superpower and the pound was no longer safe. When trust collapses, where do you find absolute safety? Dying reserve currencies trap capital. Britain had to implement capital controls, restricting how much money citizens could take out. This is a clear signal that the government knows the currency is dying and is trying to prevent escape. Britain's stage 6 lasted 15 years from 1945 to 1960. During that time, there were clear signals to exit the 1949 devaluation, the Suez Crisis. Most people didn't exit. They believed the pound was too big to fail. They were wrong. The people who stayed in pounds through stage 6 were destroyed in stage 7. Imagine having a secret playbook that showed you exactly what the world's richest families bought before every single currency collapse in history. What I just showed you is the public timeline. But there's a hidden timeline. What smart money was doing. They weren't reading the news. They were following the indicators. They were quietly moving wealth to dollar assets, gold, and real estate. This is the difference between surviving a collapse and profiting from it. I've created an exclusive series for our members, the Reserve Currency Death Playbook. It breaks down the hidden timeline of every collapse, not just what happened, but what the top 1% did. We cover the specific assets that perform best and the indicators that precede stage 7 by 6 to 18 months. If you're serious about protecting your wealth, join us. Click the join button below. Now, let me show you stage 7, because this is where it gets really bad. Are you prepared to lose 30% of your purchasing power overnight? Stage 7 is replacement and collapse. For Britain, it was 7 brutal years, 1960 to 1967. It started with accelerated capital flight. The government responded with stricter capital controls. which only accelerated the flight. Controls are a signal. Escape now. By 1964, Britain was losing reserves at an unsustainable rate and was forced to beg the IMF for loans. Humiliating. In November 1967, they had no choice. The pound was devalued again, from $2.80 to $2.40, another 14% loss. This was the final break. This devaluation destroyed the British middle class. Inflation hit 7% instantly. The math is brutal. $100,000 in 1945 was worth about $50,000 by 1980, an 87% loss over 35 years. Imagine your entire retirement fund losing 80% of its value, not over decades, but in a handful of years. If you held British government bonds or cash, you got destroyed. The only survivors were those who had diversified into dollar assets, gold, or real estate. By 1970, it was completely over. The pound was a regional currency. London operated in dollars. Britain went from stage 5 to stage 7 in 22 years, losing 92% of its value. The dollar entered stage 5 in 2008. That was 17 years ago. Stage 6 is beginning now. We are seeing the undeniable indicators. China and Russia actively reducing dollar reserves since 2014. Saudi Arabia accepting yuan for oil sales in 2023, unofficially ending the petrodollar system. The BRICS nations openly announcing plans for a common currency, an unprecedented stage 6 event. Central bank gold purchases exploding in 2022 and 2023. The pattern is identical to the 1950s. Are you going to wait until the collapse is in the headlines? Or are you going to position yourself before the crowd panics? Here is the projected timeline based on the British template. 2025 to 2027, the public doesn't notice. Bilateral trade agreements increase. The dollar's share of global reserves falls to 50%. 2027 to 2029, the first major crisis hits. A dollar devaluation event is triggered. This shock accelerates the global dumping of dollar assets. 2029 to 2033, capital controls will be implemented. The US tries to trap money inside the system. By 2033, the dollar's share drops below 40%. What real asset will you own when $100,000 only buys what $35,000 buys today? Stage 7, the final collapse, 2033 to 2035. This is the equivalent of Britain's 1967 moment. The US government is unable to defend the value. A catastrophic devaluation hits, 22-35% loss in a short period. The stock market crashes. Social chaos, political upheaval, and emergency measures ensue. 2035 to 2040 transition. A new reserve system emerges, most likely a commodity-backed digital BRICS-managed basket currency. 2042 to 2045 stabilization. The dollar stabilizes at a much lower value, having lost 65% to 80% of its purchasing power. The US loses the exorbitant privilege. You don't get the reserve status back. The pattern never fails. The only is, what do you do? Diversify now. Don't hold all your wealth in dollars. Hold gold. It is the only asset that survived every single reserve currency transition. Hold real assets, real estate, productive businesses, commodities. Watch the indicators. Monitor central bank gold purchases and trade agreements. When these accelerate, your window is closing. The timeline is set, 2025 to 2045. The pattern is clear. If this video showed you what's coming, hit that subscribe button right now. Over the next 10 years, I'll be tracking stage 6 and 7 month by month, showing you the indicators as they happen. You don't want to miss those updates. They could be the difference between surviving this transition and being destroyed by it. Subscribe now. And if you want the deeper analysis and specific asset allocations, Click Join below. The reserve currency death playbook is waiting. We are entering the final 10 years of the dollar. Be ready.